I've seen a bunch of YouTube videos where some influencer picks a homeless guy at random, drives him around in his nice luxury car, buys him a new outfit, buys him dinner, then takes him right back to where he started, acting like he solved any sort of problems in the poor man's life. Those videos get a lot of likes, even though it's pretty much just transparent virtue signaling. I personally don't call them out because at least they're doing something. And I'm kind of the view that if they're helping, then I don't really care why. But because videos like that are kind of low-key obnoxious, I debated for a long time on whether to include this segment in my video. I even asked my followers on Twitter whether they would be open to a video on how to render aid to the homeless in a cost-effective and pragmatic way, being that I lived for a while in an area with a large number of homeless encampments, and if you have a functioning endocrine gland, then you feel empathy, and it's hard for you to see human suffering and not do anything about it. There's this feeling of powerlessness that really, really sucks. A lot of those encampments were along the bike trail that I used to use all the time, so I wound up talking to these people on a few occasions, and overwhelmingly they don't want handouts, they want opportunities, but I can't provide that. An actual permanent solution to homelessness is something like the Housing First program, although it's also kind of not often discussed that the homelessness issue in much of the U.S. is not a housing problem, it's a drug problem. Heroin and meth are just apparently so incredible that a lot of people would rather continue to use them and remain on the street than get clean in order to qualify for federal housing programs. And you can't really help people like that. They have to get to the point where they're no longer getting the high that they want before they'll go and avail themselves of those programs. It is a manageable problem, though. Only 8% of homeless people are chronically homeless, which is to say on the street for 3 years or longer. Everybody else is only there temporarily because, unsurprisingly, being homeless sucks a big dick, and they want to get off the streets as soon as possible, and they're just there because it's the nature of the system that we live under, that there are booms and busts, and if they don't prepare adequately for the lean times, then they find themselves unable to pay rent, or for some other reason unable to make ends meet, and they're out on their asses, and that's suboptimal, to say the least. I don't have any political power beyond that of any other citizen. I don't have the ear of a lobbyist. I don't have a lot of land, or I would build tiny homes and try to rehabilitate the homeless in my area. I don't have those kinds of means. But if you're like me, and if for no other reason than it hurts to see human suffering and do nothing about it, you want to render some kind of aid, there are ways to do that that are actually surprisingly cost effective, that don't have to break the bank and don't have to take a huge amount of effort. No one asks you to be Superman. No one expects you to do everything. In fact, the bar is surprisingly low. Having shown friends some of these care packages and things I put together in the past, they were way too impressed by it, given what a relatively modest effort it really was. People don't expect hardly anything from you because most people don't do anything. So if you do anything at all, it counts for a lot. And it counts for a lot to the homeless too, because more than the material items that you give them, they're going to value the knowledge that people who walk by are not indifferent to what's happening, that there are people who see them and who care. I'm just saying this to make it clear that I'm not pretending, and neither should you pretend, that giving a couple of cheap items to homeless people is a meaningful solution to their problem. It's not. It's a Band-Aid. It's just immediate but temporary relief for some of the suckier aspects of being exposed to the elements 24/7, and a gesture of caring. Here are some of the care packages I've put together in the past, always in batches of 10, as that's what will fit in the trunk of my car comfortably. I can also fit 3 at a time in my backpack. You can see I've got hygienic items in there. I've got 18650 based flashlights. I've got power banks so that they can store some amount of electricity and charge their phone without having to go to McDonald's every time or Starbucks. There's Dry socks, they always want dry socks because socks get ruined really quickly if they just get wet constantly. And umbrellas. That's a seasonal item. If you're putting together these packages, you want to be aware of what they're going to need based on what season it is. For example, in the winter, my care packages always include hand warmers, mittens, and things like that, because they can use that stuff when it's cold. And when it's in the rainy season, I put together care packages with ponchos and umbrellas. But if you don't even want to get that involved, you don't have to. You can put together a couple small items to keep in your car. Because oftentimes, you don't necessarily run across homeless people on foot. You see them waiting next to a stoplight with a sign or something, and you have like 5 seconds to react. You can't, even if you want to give them money, and I don't, which is why I put together care packages, because I don't want to enable their drug habit if they have one. You can't really react in that time and get, fumble around in your car to get your wallet to give them money. You need something you can grab in a hurry and toss out the window. That's why, if your car has sort of cubbies like these, it's a good place to store ponchos. I can fit about 12 in here. It tapers towards this end, so the number reduce with each stack. There are, I think, 3 here, 4 here, and 5 here. And this is not really a solution to all of their problems. It's in fact only a solution to one. But as sucky as their situation is, at least this way, they're less wet. You can't solve all their problems. You can solve one of them, though. Then in the other one, on the other side, are umbrellas. It's a bit of a stretch to go and grab one. If you have a passenger, you can train them to hand you one when you request it. Then in the glove box, more umbrellas. Don't just go as cheap as you can, like the dollar store, because these umbrellas are itty bitty. They're like child size. This is the kind of umbrella you would expect a Russian circus bear to be holding as it rides a tricycle. If you're going to bother doing this at all, you should really get them something that they can use. It shouldn't be the absolute cheapest thing possible, because that's going to break in less than a week, and then they're going to throw it away. And then what have you accomplished? It should be something they can really use and make lasting use of, which is why those umbrellas were not the little dollar store ones. They are oversized. You should look for oversized in the description. Amazon has them for like $10. And the folding ones are not the most durable, but they will collapse into a size that fits in the car door, and you can store a lot of them easily, which is why I still go with those. Those are just some ways, without breaking the bank, that you can alleviate your own feelings of anxiety and powerlessness when faced with the country's mounting homelessness epidemic. Contrary to what those influencers who drive a homeless guy around for a day might have you believe, those acts do not by themselves mean that you're a good person if you're concerned with that sort of thing or what other people think of you. However, it is true that habits kind of make the person. The saying goes, fake it till you make it, but I would say it's not even really faking it. Our personalities are not static. They evolve over time and are influenced greatly by our habits. If you feel you're lacking in that area, or you would like to develop your personality in a more gentle and humanitarian direction, picking up a habit like this will, over time, if you stick to it, change who you are and what you're like. You'll find yourself thinking differently, and you'll find yourself undertaking actions of this nature that you might not have before. And you should make videos about it too. Not to virtue signal and say, oh, look at me, look at how good I am, look at how I fucking buy organic gluten-free shit or whatever. It's because it will influence other people. We're very suggestible social creatures in that way. If people see somebody that they know and are familiar with and trust the opinions of doing this kind of thing, it will give them that idea and push them in that direction. That's how I got into doing it, and I hope that the people watching this will get some ideas from this video for little things that they can do to alleviate suffering in their area. I've been at it for a while. I'm going to continue. I just don't intend to get up my own ass about it, because this is not a replacement for institutional political solutions to homelessness. The solution is the Housing First program. And as much as it chafes people whose morality centers around punishment and punitive concepts of justice, having a requirement that they get off of drugs in order to get into housing means that there's going to be a large portion, well, not a large portion, it's a subset of that 8%, but there's going to be a chunk of people who just don't want to do it, who love the drugs too much. And you might think that putting them into housing will turn that area into a shithole, but largely that seems not to be the case based on the implementation of Housing First in Utah. They keep to themselves. They stay at home, they leave only to get drugs from their dealer, and they wind down the rest of their career in meth or cocaine or heroin or whatever in that little apartment until they want to get their life back on track. And when they reach that point, they can do it because they have housing. In the past, the attitude has been housing should be something that you work up to, but you really can't get anywhere if you don't start with housing, because you're sick all the time. For one thing, if you live under constant exposure to the elements, you get all sorts of conditions that you and I are not familiar with because we're sheltered by air-conditioned structures, and we don't experience that sort of thing, which brings to mind another thing you might include in care packages is just medications for things like colds. But anyway, housing is really a starting point, without which you can't really get anywhere. You need shelter, you need someplace safe to store your belongings in order to build up a life from there. You need some place to charge your phone, which is why I also advocate for power banks. I have these solar panels I gave out a while back. They're cheap, but they're great quality. They're about 7 watts. They're by GB Tiger. They're only about $22, and there's a little power bank. It's not an expensive one. It's only about 37 watt hours. I gave those out in the summer, of course, because it's a seasonal item, like I mentioned earlier. And the importance of that, you might say, isn't that kind of a luxury? Isn't that frivolous? No, it's not. They seem to all have phones, and they need those phones, and they need to be able to charge them because you can't get a job by filling out a paper application these days. Every place wants you to apply online, and it's kind of hard to do that in the library when you're fighting 10 other hobos for the same computer because that one dude's jacking off on it, looking at internet porn. They need internet access is a necessity, and for that you need electricity, and giving them the ability to gather electricity wherever they are rather than having to go to institutions like cafes and restaurants and things where there's free USB ports and Wi-Fi and things like that. They just make a nuisance of themselves, and people think they're doing it to be a nuisance when they're only there because they need electricity. So that's another good inclusion. It makes more sense in the summer, but the power banks can be a year-round thing. And I found in the past, Zippo makes an electric hand warmer that doubles as a power bank, and that's kind of a 2-for-1 thing. That's a efficient inclusion. I emphatically don't mean to suggest that if you enjoy some kind of success in your life that you therefore owe other people anything. People don't respond to guilt anyways. It just makes them dig in their heels to spite you. However, having gone through a lot of lean times, when times are good for me, I feel as though I should give something back. Something. I mean, it doesn't have to be a lot, but some of that prosperity should spill over. I mean, I'm getting $1,000 a month for underwater hamsters. I can afford some socks and umbrellas and ponchos and shit. That's not a big ask. One more thing. You can learn from my blunders. Don't offer these items to anybody who looks like they're homeless, because as it turns out, if you guess wrong, many people find that quite offensive. Don't ask if they're homeless, because they're people. They have pride. They may not wish to identify themselves as homeless due to the stigma associated with that label. Instead, ask, are you experiencing hardship? Anyway, I've eaten up enough of your time with this. Back to hamsters. Well, here I am at Home Depot. When I left the house, it was raining and cold and nasty. That's why I wore my heated gear. Look at it now. What the fuck is that? Anyway, I'm going to head in a moment and see if I can't find dowels or some kind of support leg for the removable second floor of Megahab. I've been putting that off for too long. Mostly I've just been decompressing from the road trip. It's a 5-day road trip to across country following my vacation, and that's tedious. It takes a huge toll on you. So I've just been unpacking, decompressing, getting resituated, and all that shit. This looks like it might work, but the hamsters will chew through it in a hurry because it's wood. I need something the hamsters won't chew. These would work nicely, except they're way too long. These, however, ought to work nicely. My old nemesis, porn fridge. Dare you try to titillate me once more with a unique combination of tasty treats for my tum-tum and pornography? You'll get nowhere this time. I've got the power of God and anime on my side. Porn washing machine. You've appeared as well, have you? No fucking way. Somebody talk me out of this. How much is it? It's $180. That's legit tempting. I gotta restrain myself though. I'll be back for you later. Not gonna lie, it's nice to see little people represented. Although choosing to make the witch like 3 feet tall kind of diminishes the scare factor. If this thing came at you in like a darkened hallway, wouldn't you just like haul off and kick it? Dare you sample the many delicious flavors of the Ultra Vape? See, nobody's talking these days about the dangers of too much calcium. If you haven't tried this position yet, I recommend it. You feel like a Thanksgiving turkey. Look at him, he's enjoying it. Still only 2 genders at Home Depot. Realized halfway through this I ought to be filming it. I'm feeling really under the weather. I'm still going to push to get this ready by Monday night. You guys were really generous to put up with a 2-week schedule, and it's much easier on me, and I don't want to push it out any further than that. These might be a little tall. I could probably put some spacers up here on top to bring the bottoms up. I don't know though. I'll have to see how it sits in the habitat. This of course being the removable second floor. And I have a nice set of cabinet handles I'm going to put here and here, so it's easy to lift out. It's going to be fucking sick as hamsterology goes. Man, what is my life? Oh, so I should cover the recent explosion in new followers. I commented in passing on a Belle Delphine Twitter post about how her hamster was stolen. I was like, well, send your little hamster to me and I will protect him. I will house him inside of Hampture and he shall be protected there forevermore. And I didn't think any more of it. And then I came back like an hour later, and it was up to 1,000 likes and a couple hundred retweets. And then by the end of it, all told, I got like 4.4 thousand likes on that post, and it boosted my Twitch from 700 followers up to 1.5 thousand. My Twitter went up to, see what's that? It's like 4,000 something. I'm gonna flip my shit when it hits 5,000. Yeah, 4,545, where it was like in the high 2,000s and not even quite 3,000, I think, before. So that's quite a big jump. I'm very thankful for that and feeling blessed. I translated to I think 2 new patrons and I think 2 or 3 t-shirt sales. So you really got to cast a wide net when you're doing this, because what percentage of people is gonna buy anything? Hopefully, when I fucking bring the motherfucking thunder with Megahab, that will even expand the viewership more. A lot of people were saying, you know, okay, whenever you do anything at all on the internet that garners a lot of attention, just statistically, some of that attention is going to be positive, and some of it's going to be negative. And you had the people saying, wow, this is amazingly creative, I love this, well done. And then there were the people saying, oh no, you're torturing the hamster. And the hamster's clearly not in pain. And these were the sort of people who would list long series of accusations like, how do they breathe? There's no exercise, there's no hides, there's no, what do you do about the cold? And then I would answer that all of them, having taken precautions for all of those things, but it still would not change their mind, because you can't argue with feelings, and they are arguing with you because they had a strong negative feeling when they saw a hamster that looked like it was in danger in an aquarium. So there's nothing you can do to satisfy someone like that. You kind of have to wait for the reaction, the chemical reaction, to burn out in their brain before you come at them again. I'm not going to put it in there without the handles because I won't be able to get it out. Look at that. Metal handles. They weren't expensive either, because of economies of scale, because there's plenty of people who buy handles for cabinets. Probably less people buying them for habitats, I would wager. And this one will go over here. And there will be another one over here. And that will enable me to lift it easily up out of the interior. In fact, I may buy another pair of these and put them on the lid of Megahab, if it's strong enough, because then I don't have to lift it from the bottom. I can lift it from a pair of handles. I'm just concerned about the durability and whether that would hold. Well, if I try it and it busts something important, I don't have to start all over. I can reuse like 90% of the components. I just have to buy a new habitat shell probably, which is much cheaper than when I originally bought it. It was like $200 when I bought it, and now it's now it's like $45. Let's see. And I can just position this one so I'll know where the other one goes. Giving me a little bit of difficulty. I might have used 2 sheets of Coroplast, come to think of it. it would have been sturdier. I might still do that, but if I don't need to, I'm not going to. Oh, I didn't think of this. It's designed to go through a thick piece of wood, so there's a bunch of extra. I can always go back to Home Depot and get shorter bolts of this type. That's not a big deal. Hope that works. I want to be drilling all kinds of holes. Yes, perfect. Awesome. This will work well enough that I can drop it in Habitat and have a look at how well it aligns and everything. That's good enough for tonight. So far, nobody at the Home Depot has caught on to my scheme except for that one person I told. Got to keep a low profile when you're doing mad science. I should go in there with like a mask and a cape. I'll be like, oh, it's just an autistic guy. Nothing to worry about. Or I can fucking Naruto run down the aisles and they'll never catch me anyways. We invented Naruto running, son. Let's see. It's aligned more or less. This is a little bit suboptimal. I'm probably getting copyrighted striked for the fucking clips in the background of the other parts of this video. I'm worried about that. That's a bit off center, but that's okay. So is this one, actually. It's perfectly fine. As long as they're both fucked up in the same way, then the symmetry is preserved. So yeah, that was annoying, having to argue with people. I guess I didn't have to. I eventually just stopped. Because these people eat meat that was factory farmed. They fucking keep... I was like, well, they're like, why do you do this? I'm like, it's cool to look at. And I'm like, well, that's a psychopathic reason. They're like, well, that's why you keep fish. Because fish are cool to look at. You don't pet them. That was an ordeal. It's mostly over now. You can kind of ride these things out. Uh-oh. That's a bit off center. Yeah, it's too off center. I had to align it more perfectly than that. This is going to be sloppy. It really frustrates me. If you don't get it perfect the first time, then you wind up with really ugly parts of it. There we go. So this is not ideal. I still need to replace the screws here that are too long. But look. Awesome. Yeah, look at that. It's a bit excessive space down here, and not quite enough up here. But these were actually one of the longer forms of this bolt, so I can probably just go back there with one of these bolts and get a version of this that's like an inch or so shorter, and then that would be perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. I really think I want to add those handles, but then again, I had trouble precisely cutting the holes for this. If I fucked up the holes on the lid, that would compromise the water tightness, so I might not. Oh, real quick, if I feel like I can cram 3 floors in here, because the bottom floor only has to be here, and I can then put like another one here. It should be a little bit cramped, but it would be more floor space. I can do that. I still have plenty more coroplast. That's it for this video. I guess the main takeaways are that you don't have to do a lot, because most people are doing nothing. So even if you do a little bit, you're already ahead of the curve. Also, that if you bother to give it all, it should be something of real use that takes into account the seasonal weather and things like that. It figures I would get sick towards the end of making this video. You know, when I get sick, I start thinking about my own mortality. In the future, I'm already dead. But it's no use focusing on that because I can't change it. I should focus on what I can change, which is what happens between now and then. I can't think of any better goal to shoot for than to arrive on my deathbed able to say that I wasn't a complete piece of shit. That when I saw suffering around me, I tried to do something. It can feel overwhelming. There's just so much shit in the world. I guess if I can, I would like to diminish some of that suffering and build cool stuff that makes people believe that the old dreams about what the future were going to be like aren't dead yet. That cool stuff can still happen and that regular people can do it. I mean, if some guy can build an underwater base, even if it's a model, then maybe we will live underwater. Maybe we will live in space and the South Pole and stuff like that. The future can still be cool.